what do we need for create? I'm going to put a binding pry and see how the information is getting passed in. So let's try get to login and say bob@example.com and then password. Now let's look at our server logs. Oops. And then params. Okay, we see that the email getting passed in is bob@example.com. Then we see the password that's getting passed in is password, and the controller is logins, and the action is create. Okay, so we have all the information we need to proceed here. So I'm going to exit out. So I can find chef, again, we don't need to use instance variable here. We can just use a local variable because this is not a model back form. We're not performing any CRUD action, so we can just use this. So chef.findBy, since we're passing in email, we're going to find by email, right? Params, and we're gonna grab the email from params that's getting passed in. Now we have to ensure to proceed that this chef is valid. That means the email that was entered from the login form actually exists. How do you verify that? How do you verify that this actually exists and is not nil? Something like this, if chef. Okay, and that alone takes care of that. And then else and now I'm gonna hop in the Rails console real quick over here. So let's say chef, let's just model this, okay? Chef dot find by email, let's say bob@example.com. So I have to put it in a string. bob@example.com. Okay, so we grab Bob, which is exactly what we did. Now to authenticate Bob, to authenticate the user, we need to compare the password, right? So chef.authenticate, and then we enter in the password. We see that it returns the object. Okay, now if I do chef.authenticate and enter in an incorrect password and hit return, we see that it returns false. So we can just use this logic right here, chef.authenticate. So if chef and chef.authenticate, and then I have to pass in the password from the params hash. So params password, then I want to do something, right? So I'll just say do something, and then else I want to say there was something wrong, because now either the email was invalid or the password did not authenticate, right? It was incorrect password. So we want to say something like this, flash.now, and then danger. I want to say your email address or password does not match. Okay, you don't want to say something very specific, whether if it's email address that doesn't match or password, you just want to keep it kind of generic, okay? And then we want to render new, which is our normal method. Okay, now what do we want to do here? Where we say do something. We want to let the user know that they've authenticated, right? So flash success, we want to say something like you are logged in. And then we want to redirect, right? Redirect to, now if a user logs in, we want to send them to the index page, right? The recipes index. So recipes path. Okay. Now is the tricky part. Now this is where we handle the logging in simulation, right? Remember, we said that it's handled by what's called a session, and then whatever you enter in for the session for the user object, that is stored in the browser's cookie, right? And that's how you simulate login. So we're gonna type in something like this, session, and we want to save the chef ID, okay? Chef ID of the user object. So the user object is chef, which we're grabbing by email, and then we authenticate the password, and if the password is correct, then we're going to take the chef ID of chef, and then we're going to store it. So we're going to take the chef ID of the chef and then store it in our browser session cookie, okay? And that is literally it. So now the user is logged in. Okay, now similarly, if you want to log out the user, all you have to do is set the session user ID. Sorry, not user ID, we're using chef. So chef ID to nil, and that's it. And then you want to send some kind of message saying flash success, you have logged out, and then we want to redirect to here root path. Okay, so let's see that in action. Let's go to login, email bob@example.com, and then password was password, login, you are logged in, and we're in the index page for recipes. Perfect. Now let me log out. We don't have a logout path yet, so I'm just gonna do logout. You have logged out, and we're back to the root path. Perfect. Now one thing, let's see if I type in an invalid email address at example.com and then leave password, what happens? Your email address or password does not match. Perfect. Now I don't really like how this message is showing up. It's not going all the way. So I'm gonna change that. But that validation is working. Now let's type in an incorrect password for Bob. You see your email address or password does not match. Perfect. All right. Now let's log Bob in again. Log in. You're now logged in. Notice how this message is kind of not all the way. So this one we have to change as well. So that's all these messages, these flash messages are handled by our messages partial. So let's go ahead and change that. I think it's an issue with the span. So under layouts, right here, messages. Okay, cool. 10, I'm just gonna span it all the way. Let's try this again. Log in. Bob@example.com. Password. Perfect, much better. You're logged in and it's showing all the way. Okay, now let me log out. All right, So this is all the way. Perfect.